Welcome back to Cup of Time. I'm Michael Bettine, your tour guide and host. And today, I want to continue from last week's video when we were looking at one gong and playing it and listening to it and how to listen to different things, and also looking at the different areas on the gong that bring out the different sounds and how to effectively use one gong and create a whole world of sounds. Now this week, we're going to double that. 2 gongs. And we're going to work with various pairs of gongs. But first, I'd really like to talk about pairing gongs together. I get this question a lot from people. I've got a gong, I'm going to buy a second gong, what should I get? First thing I ask them is, what gong do you have? Because to me, that determines where you should go as far as getting a second gong. Now, you've probably heard me say this before in a different video, or maybe you've read it on one of my blogs or something, but I've never understood people who have like 5 planet gongs, or 5 symphonic gongs, or 5 Chau gongs, or 5 wind gongs, because they all sound alike. The only real difference you get is in pitch. You've got higher gongs and lower gongs, but they all have the same sort of tonality, timbre, texture, So I've never used, multiple gongs of the same type. Very rarely. And if I have, it's only been 2 of the same in a whole setup of maybe 5 or 6. But if I'm going to use 2 gongs, I prefer to use 2 very different gongs. Because I want not only hopefully a different tuning, but I really want a different texture of the sound, different timbre, different overall character. So what I have up here now is I have my main gong, my Paiste 32-inch Symphonic, and I have the number 0 bronze gong. So this one is made out of nickel silver, this is made out of B8 bronze. So right away we have 2 different materials, so I'm going to get 2 different sonic characters. This is also symphonic type, and you can notice how it looks, and this is more of an earth type with the big hammerings. It's got a very flat face. So this is going to give me a very different sound character. Another factor, this is a 32-inch gong. This is a 28-inch gong. So I have a different size factor, which should give me some different character. Although, when we're working with the Paiste bronze gongs versus nickel silver, the bronze material creates a much darker sound. So we can't always go by, I'm going to get a smaller gong and it's going to be darker, because this actually has a lower pitch than some of my larger gongs because of the material. But these are the types of things I look at. And it's really kind of been that way through my whole career of being a drummer and a percussionist, is I don't like to have a whole bunch of the same thing. To me, it doesn't make any sense. Even on my drum sets, instead of having 6 tom-toms that are all the same, I would like to mix the drums up. I might have a small monotom, a rototom, a timbale with a brass shell, and then a floor tom. And they might be tuned in a pitch sequence going doot, 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 doot down, but because of the different shell materials, they're going to have a very different sound character. So I prefer to do that instead of having like 4 toms that are all basically the same drum with a different pitch. It'd be like a piano. A piano, it's a piano wherever you play it. It's just a different note. But if you had some sort of instrument made where you could hit one key and it's a piano, another key it's a trumpet, another key it's a violin, another key it's an oboe, there you go. Now you're playing the notes, but each note comes out with a different character. So that's what I look for when I'm matching gongs. I want to have a different sort of tonal character. So let's just give a listen to these first before I play them. So I'll start striking the center of each to get sort of the fundamental note, and then I'll move down about halfway between the center and the edge. So we bring in some overtones and get an idea of how those fit together. But I like these two working together, and this in my working set they're set up just like this, right next to each other. Now right away you can notice the difference. This one stayed very solid and focused in the center. This one started focused, but then it brought in almost a chordal series of overtones. And this had more of a ba sound, where this had more of a ba sound. So listen to that again, the difference in the character of the initial strike in the center. So now we'll move out, or down I should say, down here. One more time. So notice, again, very different character in there as far as overtones and how the gongs opened up. Another important thing to notice is how they sounded together. These two pair up nicely. I mean, they're very complementary of each other. So generally, if I'm working in a gong meditation session, I want gongs that are going to be harmonious and they pair well together. Now, if I'm working in an improv, experimental music type situation, all bets are off. I might want gongs that clash with each other or have extremely different characters because I'm going for a completely different thing. But when I'm playing in a meditation type session, I'm looking for harmony. So that's a big thing I look for when I'm using multiple gongs. If I'm using 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, whatever, I want them to be harmonious with each other, but I want them to have all different sound characters. Like I said, I don't need 3 32-inch planet gongs that are all going to be tuned, really close to each other. To me, that's like, what a waste. It's great if that's all you want to do is create some sort of beat patterns because you've got two gongs that are just slightly out of tune. But to do that all night, to me, would be very boring. So I do have gongs that create beat patterns, but they are also very different gongs. So again, to have like two planet gongs that are the same size and almost the same tuning, I see no point. So let me get another mallet here. Here's my old trusty, this is about a 40-year-old Paiste mallet here. But I'm going to do like I did last time. I'm going to move my way around the gongs. Remember, I was playing center and I was moving out and in and up and down, exciting the face in different ways to bring out different tones. Only we're going to use two gongs now. And when I'm playing two gongs like this, I generally like to stand in the middle. Sometimes I will move over just to get a better sort of view of what's happening on one. But if I'm way over here and I'm playing this one, I really have no idea what this is doing, because gongs are fairly directional. So this sound is going out this way. I can hear it, but I'm not hearing all the subtleties which are going out. Conversely, if I've got a gong below, I will bend over, and try to listen to both like this, because if I'm playing a gong that's below my waist, I have no idea what it's doing. That sound is just going right out and I have no idea. So I like to get down there, hear what's going, so I can compare, especially compare volume. If I'm standing here and playing this one, it's difficult to get an accurate judge of how loud this is. I might be playing it louder because I'm not in the line of it, so I'm not hearing it as easily. So I might overcompensate so I can hear it, and I will think, oh, these sound the same volume. When in essence, this one is louder because I'm over here, and also this one's so loud in my ear, I have to play this one louder to bring it up to the same volume. So we're going to use some different mallets. I'll probably switch off, and we'll see what happens here. Okay, there's a sort of a short example. And you might have noticed in the middle, I hit the handle of the mallet over here. I don't normally have this many mallets crammed up here, so I usually get them a little more out of the way like that so that doesn't happen. But when things happen like that, you just keep going on and people don't tend to notice. So there's these two gongs, the 32-inch Symphonic and the 28-inch bronze number 0 earth type. So let's take a look at a couple of others here. Okay, so now we got changed one of the gongs here. Still got the 32-inch Symphonic, but I have a bronze counterpart, the number 6, which is based on the Symphonic design. So similar stylings in gongs, but again, different materials. Nickel silver, bronze. So the sound character is different and the way they react is different. This is a much stiffer, darker gong than this one is. So let's do the same thing. I'll start out playing the middles, move down and play between the center and the edge, and then we'll just mix it up and play some sounds and see how we can match these up. But first let's check out how they work together. And just to say, I normally have the number 0, the last gong here, and then this one is over here on this side. So those are my top 3 gongs on my rack. I like how the 3 of them work together. Here we go. You might notice this one has a definite vibrato in the center. The Symphonic doesn't, but when I hit this one, listen for it. Wow, 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 wow. And it's actually exciting this one, and I'm getting secondary beat pattern off of the Symphonic. So let's hit the center one more time. A similar character. We have definitely 2 different pitches, so that helps. Now let's go more between the center and edge, get some overtones. So we can hear a different character of overtones between these two. So again, when I'm pairing gongs, whether I'm pairing stuff out of my collection or I'm buying a new gong to add, I'm listening to these sort of things. You know, how do they work together? Is there a tonal balance? Is there a difference between them? So they have different pitches, different timbres, different texture of sound. Do they respond differently so that when I'm playing them, each gong will bring out different characters? So I'm always listening for that. Yet overall, are they complementary? Do they work well together? So let's try these two. So hopefully you could really hear it there. There was a very similar character between these because they're the same design. Although this bronze one had a much darker character, and the nickel silver tended to bring out more highs. They blended well together, but that's why I like to have the number 0, the earth type, in between these two, because I think it makes a real nice contrast to both of them, where these are quite similar. So we'll switch out a couple of other gongs here. Okay, we have mystery gong here. I just took it out of the case and thought I'd leave it up there. Let's see what we have. Number 2, bronze gong, water type gong. Again, comparing and contrasting, completely different design of a gong. You can just tell by looking at it, this is nothing at all like a symphonic gong. Different materials, nickel silver, B8 bronze. We're going to have quite a variety of sound here. So let's do this. Now this one is normally under the symphonic. I like it down here because I like using these two together a lot. I think they're a great pair. Let's change some mallets here. So let's do the same thing. We'll do the center and then the edge and just compare the sounds and see how they're different and hopefully how they blend. Now, tonally, these are fairly close, and you can hear that, but a completely different character of sound. Let's do that again. And both deliver a really nice solid center hit. Generally, on the number 2, I use a larger, heavier mallet because this center, you can see that there are like hundreds of very small hammer hits on the center, and it's a slightly reversed boss. This is extremely stiff and hard to activate, so it takes a little more mallet, a little more muscle. Just to show you, here's the small Chalklin mallet with medium. Which does a fine job, but to get a little more of the gong opening, this one probably weighs twice as much. But I really like that very focused center tone. It's completely different than any of the other gongs. So now let's try the edge. Again, you can hear how the sounds are very different at the edge. This is kind of just a solid overtone where this is almost like a, it sort of accelerates into the overtones. So we've got a very different character between these two gongs. Now here's another thing to think about when you're playing two gongs, especially if you're playing them together like this. It's very difficult to play one gong quieter than the other because the way our brain and our bodies work is our hands, if we're playing together like this, our hands want to strike with the same force. Especially when I'm using like a matched pair, like the rollers here. If I'm playing with the rollers, both hands want to strike with the same force. So if I want to play one gong louder than the other, it really takes a lot of work to move past that part of your brain and get to where you can play one hand harder and the other one softer. But it's just a natural thing in the design of our brains and bodies where when we're playing motion like this, one after another, it's very hard to play like one hard and one soft. It really is. So one way I counterbalance that is, as you've seen me move up and down the mallet, if I want to play quieter over here, I'll choke up on the mallet and I'll come down further on the mallet here so I can get a little more motion and swing in there. And thus I can play harder. And this one, I cannot get all that motion and I cannot get that volume. So that's a thing to watch. Go back and rewind and watch this again and watch my hands and notice when I'm trying to shift volumes how I'm working the mallets that way often, because it is very difficult to change like that. Okay, let's play these two guys. I'll use a couple different mallets here. These two, I think, really work well together. This is a favorite pairing of mine. Okay. I love that pairing. I think there's just some really nice harmonies between them. I like that they're very different gongs. This has such a solid center sound, and it's big and crashy, and when you open it up, it's beautiful sound, and it complements the 32-inch very well. So, these are the things I'm listening for when I'm playing. Just like in the last video talking about playing one gong and listening for moving around, listening for how the gong opens up and what the sounds are. It's no different with two. You work it the same way, and you're listening, and I'm looking for balances between them, both volume-wise and also the harmonics. How are they blooming? I want to get that and balance it too. And then bringing one up, maybe bringing one down. The problem I see with a lot of people using multiple gongs is it's just, I don't know how to describe it, but they've got two gongs and it's random. They're just kind of walking around, or they've got gongs down here and they're just kind of hitting them. And not once do I ever think that they're listening to what's going on. They're just banging on the gongs and making noise, and to me it's not musical, and even more so it's not meditative at all. This randomness, as much as most of what I do is improvised, none of it is random. I know that's sort of a contradiction, but it's not random because, again, I practice all the time. And I've been practicing percussion for 50 years. I know what I'm doing when I'm up here. It's no haphazard stuff. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know how to work two gongs together and to bring out sounds that will complement, or in some cases, oppose each other. So nothing is an accident, but I see too many people. I watch videos and that. I see too many people, they're just banging away. Like, yeah, I'll just hit this one and I'll hit this one. Oh, that probably sounds good. And then, they'll play something below them and they'll have no idea what's going on over there. And I don't know, maybe it works for them and the people who listen to them, but it doesn't work for me. I'm always looking for the harmony. I'm looking for things. How do they fit together in a harmonious way? So let's switch out gongs again. Okay, so now we've got two of the bronze gongs. We have the number 0 and the number 6, the earth and the symphonic type. And normally they are this way in my setup. I'll have the symphonic over on this side on my left, then the number 0 and the number 6. So let's do the same thing with these two. Okay, you can hear some similarities in the tone. They're both 28-inch bronze gongs. They're both made from the exact same blank. So there is that commonality, but very different gongs. This one opens up immediately. It's just very flexible membrane here because this is flat with very few hammer hits on it. It is a very flexible membrane. Think of it like a drum with a slack head on it. It's just, it opens up easily and it doesn't take much force to really get it to roar. Where this one is a symphonic style, it's got a slightly raised front. There's a lot of hammering behind these etchings here in rings that stiffens this whole membrane up. So this is like a drum that's tighter. So let's say we had two drums of the same size and one had a very slack head, one had a much tighter head. And that's the difference I feel when I play them. So I have to adjust, again, my technique accordingly, because if I'm hitting them with the same force, this one is just going to open up and roar and overpower this one, simply because it's much easier to play and get things happening because of the way it's designed. But this one, very solid. This one, and you can hear that right away, you know, how this one opens up so much more. So these are all the things that I take into account when I'm working with the gongs. And again, that's why you have to practice, so you know what's going on, especially when you change from one gong to another. They might react differently, and you have to be aware of that, and you have to be able to control that. Okay, let's put up some very different gongs now. Okay, two very different gongs. We have a Chinese sun gong, which is somewhere between a thin wind gong and a heavy Chau gong. This is a flat gong. It's like a wind gong that they haven't completely lathed. Instead of lathing the whole front to thin it out, they just lathe these bands. So it doesn't respond as quickly and with as much highs as a typical wind gong. This is a 28-inch sun made out of B20 bronze. So now we're bringing in a different alloy. And here's the #1 B8 bronze gong from Paiste. So let's do the same thing. We'll compare, contrast, get an idea of what they're like. Starting in the center and then between center and edge, and then we'll play around. Now you could probably see this one took a little more muscle down here to get it to open up. My first stroke didn't do much, so the next time I really had to give it a little more, because this is probably weighs twice as much as what this is. And it's probably twice as thick. So there's really a big difference in how you play. And again, you have to know this when you're out playing a gig, that, oh, this is going to take more force and or a bigger mallet. So if I were to switch to a bigger, heavier mallet like this, it's going to be able to open it up quicker, but it's still not going to be the same type of crash as this because it's a heavier gong. And you notice that it's sort of a focused, compact crash. Whereas this one just kind of opens right up and sprays sound everywhere. And also, even though, let's just play them softly one more time here in the center. I mean, they're not that far apart in pitch, but this opens up and loses its bottom note. It just becomes all highs. Where when this one opens up, it still keeps the bottom note. So those are other things I'm thinking about. You know, how do these gongs react when they open up? Very different character between them. So let's play these and get an idea of how they work together. Now, in listening to those two, although they're very different gongs and they react differently, once they're opened up and the bloom is happening, I hear a lot of similarities in the sound. In fact, to my ears, the characters of the open up gongs are extremely similar. So in that case, I probably would not use these two gongs together as a pair. And I might not even use them together on the same set of 4 or 5 gongs because there's that sort of similarity. Although I like how this one has that bigger, throatier bottom end sound. So a lot too depends on what you're using the specific gong for. And I tend to use the Sun Gong for that sound. I like this big bottomy sound with a few overtones. It's long lasting, and if you notice that the sound kind of, it changes. It doesn't just come out and stay flat. Listen to it again. It's changing. So I like that sort of character out of that. This one is just very straightforward. Just delivers a beautiful, big, crashy sound. I mean, that's perfect for that sort of character. Okay, let's try another pair. Why not? The next pair of gongs are two very different gongs. We have the Paiste bronze gong number 8, which is 28 inches, and the Paiste planet gong Jupiter, which is also 28 inches. B8 bronze, nickel silver. You can obviously see the designs are completely different, but they do have one commonality in that they're very stiff gongs. So they have an extremely focused center sound. The number 8, because we have these heavily hammered rings, those completely stiffen up the face, and the center is very focused, and there's some harmonics out here on the rings. On the Jupiter, the center is very focused to the tune note, and it doesn't flex like a standard symphonic gong that will give you all the crashy highs. This stays pretty much the low end and sort of a mid highs, and it really controls them. So they have that in common. Otherwise, they're going to be very different sounds and work out different ways. Now with the number 8, this is one I've been struggling with since I got it almost 6 months ago, and just trying to get this to open up. I've been playing it and playing it and playing it out here on the rings. It just hasn't yielded much. When I first got it, it was all center sound, and there was actually almost no sound playing it out here. It just didn't react, but it has loosened up. I've heard some other ones where when you play on the rings, you get this beautiful spray of harmonics. This one is getting there. It's starting to open up and present more sounds. But that's, again, a good example of how you need to work with your instruments. They need to be played, especially new gongs. You need to play them because they do break in. And part of that is just getting the metal to settle and just getting it to vibrate. And they do break in, and they do change over time. I think just about every gong I've ever owned has changed somewhat over time, except for some of the bossed gongs that are real heavy, and they're just kind of like, they're more like a bell, and they don't really change. But in the flat-faced gongs, I've noticed a lot of change over time. So you have to work with them. It's like, if you read about famous classical musicians, especially like string players, they'll say, you can't leave your violin and just sit in the case. You have to play it, because the wood needs to vibrate. It needs to come alive. And they'll say, if I haven't played it, for a couple weeks or a month or something, and I pick it up and play it, the sound isn't there. I have to play it more and get it going. So I'm a firm believer in you need to work with your instruments just to get them to open up, and also to get you to open up to what the instrument can do. So enough of that. Let's play these here. away, you can hear that commonality. Dark bell-like tone in the center. Really no highs coming out, no high overtones at all. It's just that bell-like tone. Now let's move out. Notice a difference. This one spoke open right up, and lots of overtones happening. This one stayed compact. We have more tones, but the sound is compact still. We don't get a great crash sound out of it. This one still retains what I would say a very bell-like quality, no matter how you're playing it. And as I said, when I first had this, it was just the center sound and not much else. I couldn't get it to activate, but I could hear and feel that things were, they were there. They wanted to come out. And just in the past week or so, this has opened up a lot more. And I really like that, how it's opening up, but that comes from working with it. I've been playing it, I've been working with it. The classic sort of planet sound, crash, but we don't get all that white noise highs like we would with a symphonic. So let's play some on these here and compare. So there you see very different characters of what I would call solid or compact sound. Even when the Jupiter is crashed, it's, to me, the sound is held in like this. Or a symphonic or a Chau gong or a wind gong or something, the crash is that way. The planet gongs tend to kind of pull it in. No big white noise highs, just a nice solid tone to it. And similar, that really nice bell tone in the center, and able to bring out some harmonics, but not the white noise, not all kinds of spray coming off of it, just very focused and very compact. Okay, let's look at two other gongs. Let's finish up with something a little different. Two Chinese B20 gongs. A little smaller in size. These are both about 22 inches. This is a Chau gong and a heavy wind gong. These are both from Centant, a newer Chinese company that I discovered at the Chicago Drum Show last year. And they're making some really great gongs. I hope to get some bigger ones from them. They're fantastic sounding gongs. So we've got your very typical Chau here. And like I said, this is a heavier wind gong. So it's not going to be as splashy, crashy as what you normally find, especially in this smaller size. They're actually both fairly heavy gongs. I mean, even for a Chau, this doesn't, it's a 22 inch, but it doesn't open up as much as some 22s I've heard. And when you do give it that big crash, it's a very compact crash. Same thing on the wind gong here. You notice it opens up, but there's not those real high frequencies that are normal. It's a fairly dark wind gong for 22 inches. And I really like both of these gongs a lot. again, one thing we can see, they're both the same size, 22-inch, made out of the same metal, B20 bronze. So there is a similar tonal character between them. And I found this in most gongs. If you have the same material and the same size, even if you have different designs, underneath there will be sort of a common tone, a common fundamental. And you could hear that between these, even though they're very different style gongs, they had a similar tonal character. They work well together. They offer some different things. What I like too is these work well with the B8 bronze gongs and the nickel silver gongs. They give a different voice. And I find a lot of people, especially doing gong meditation type sessions, shy away from smaller gongs. I mean, everybody's into, oh, I want a 38-inch gong and a 34-inch gong and things like that. And they don't think about something like this except as maybe a handheld gong, because it's easy to carry, it's lightweight. But what I like, and if you go back and rewind and compare some of the different sounds here, you can do what I do. Here's what I do to compare things. Open up this video in like 4 or 5 different windows and put it each one on a different pairing of gongs. That way you can play one, stop it, play another, stop it, and you can listen and compare them. But compare the sound of these to the larger gongs. And what I like about using smaller gongs like this is it's more mid-range. You could tell there's a certain, where the bigger gongs are down here and these are up here. There's a little more of that mid sound. And I find that appealing because, again, it's an alternative to everything else. Like I said, to have 4 or 5 gongs that sound so much alike, to me, is boring. But to bring in something that's going to bring in a different texture or timbre or a whole different tonal range. So even though this is dark for a small wind gong, you can tell it's more that mid sort of range, and same here. It's more mid-range than you're going to find in a 28, 32, 36, 38, larger gongs. So don't be afraid to add maybe one smaller size gong to give you that upper voice. As I talked about on one of my earlier videos, I think of orchestrating my gongs. And I usually have a 22-inch gong. Currently I'm using the Paiste 22-inch accent gong. I usually have that, or for a while I was using this one, and for a while I was using this one. I like having that smaller gong, having one in the setup to give me a higher voice, as opposed to I've got all these low sounding gongs. And then what happens is when you hit that higher voice, it really stands out. It's just like people notice it because you've been playing a lot of low tones maybe, and suddenly you have a higher voice. So for me, it's all about variety. Okay, that's probably enough for now. I could do this all night and just compare gongs. I like playing them. I like comparing them. This has been a lot of fun for me. I hope it's been fun for you, and thanks for tuning in. Subscribe down below if you like what I'm doing here. I'm trying to put out a video a week, and we will see you next week on It's Cup of Time.